AITA for moving back home pregnant after my husband left me? Hi Reddit. I don't even know where to start with this, because my entire life feels like it's unraveling in real time, and I guess I just need to get it all out somewhere. Maybe typing this will help me process, or maybe I just need strangers on the internet to tell me I'm not losing my mind. Either way, here goes. I'm 28F, and my husband, let's call him Mark, 31M, and I have been married for 3 years. We were together for 5 years before that. By most measures, our relationship was never perfect, but I thought it was solid. You know how every couple has those ups and downs you laugh about later, like, oh, remember that time we fought about IKEA furniture for 3 hours? That's how I thought of our rough patches. Temporary. Normal. Surmountable. We had the kind of story that made sense to me. I met him at 23, freshly graduated, moving into my first adult job in marketing. He worked in IT at the same company, tall with this messy, charming kind of confidence. He wasn't the loudest guy in the room, but when he looked at me, it was like he really saw me. We started dating, moved in together after about a year, and by the time he proposed, I was all in. He wasn't flashy or over the top, he was steady. Dependable. The guy who remembered how I took my coffee, who picked me up from the airport without being asked, who once drove 2 hours just to bring me soup when I got the flu at my parents' house. So when we got married, I thought, this is it. This is my person. For a while, it was just normal married life. Mortgage, grocery lists, weekend hikes. Nothing extraordinary, but that's exactly what I wanted. Then, about 4 months ago, my life shifted. We found out I was pregnant. The positive test caught me off guard. We weren't not trying, but we weren't exactly making plans either. We had talked about someday, but someday always felt comfortably far away. Still, when I saw those 2 pink lines, my heart raced in this dizzy, terrifying, yet strangely exhilarating way. When I told Mark, I braced myself for shock, maybe even hesitation. Instead, he smiled. Like, really smiled. He picked me up and spun me around like some cliché rom-com scene. That first week, he was almost giddy. He bought a couple of those first-time dad books, the kind with goofy titles like Dude, You're Gonna Be a Dad. He stayed up one night sketching out a list of baby names, half serious, half jokes. What about Gandalf if it's a boy? Strong name, right? He even stood in the empty spare room, measuring walls with a tape measure like he was already planning the nursery. And in those early weeks, even though I was nauseous and exhausted and terrified, I felt this warm, steady glow inside me. Like we were stepping into the next chapter together. But then, something shifted. It wasn't sudden, like a switch flipping overnight. It was more like watching a bright flame start to sputter until it's just smoke. Around month 3, I noticed him pulling away in ways that felt subtle at first, but grew impossible to ignore. He started working late more often. At first, I believed him when he said projects were piling up at the office. IT emergencies happen, right? But then late turned into very late, and sometimes he'd come home looking drained, barely acknowledging me before collapsing onto the couch. When I'd ask how his day was, he'd just grunt, fine. He started sleeping in the guest room, blaming my tossing and turning. I tried to laugh it off, because, yeah, I had been restless, pregnancy insomnia, weird dreams, constant bathroom trips. But there was something about the way he said it, like it wasn't just my movements keeping him awake. Like I was too much. I tried to bring him into the baby stuff, the little milestones that were everything to me. The baby's the size of a lemon this week, I'd say, grinning, holding out the app on my phone. Or, do you want to feel? I think I felt a flutter last night. He'd nod absently, eyes glazing over like he was somewhere else entirely. At first, I told myself I was overthinking it. Hormones make you paranoid. Everyone says pregnancy is an emotional roller coaster. I convinced myself I was imagining the distance. But deep down, I knew I wasn't. The moment everything shattered was 2 weeks ago. I remember it so vividly, it's like my brain branded it onto my skull. It was a Tuesday night. I had made pasta, nothing fancy, but I was proud of myself for even cooking given how drained I'd been. I set the table, hoping we could just sit and connect, maybe have one of those rare calm evenings. He barely touched his plate, just pushed the food around with his fork, staring off into space. Finally, I asked softly, "Mark, what's going on? You've been so distant lately." He put down his fork, rubbed his temples, and then he said it. "I don't think I can do this." My heart stopped. "Do what?" "This," he said, gesturing vaguely at me. "At my belly. At everything. I'm not ready to be a dad. I feel trapped." I stared at him, blinking, my mouth dry. "Trapped? What are you talking about? We planned for this. You were excited. You bought books. You." "I thought I could handle it," he interrupted. His voice wasn't angry. It wasn't even emotional. It was flat. Tired. Like he had already made up his mind. "But I can't. I don't want this life. Not now. Maybe not ever." And then he got up, walked into the bedroom, pulled out a duffel bag. "Wait, what are you doing?" I whispered, my voice breaking. "I need space," he said, shoving clothes into the bag. "I need to figure myself out. I can't stay here pretending I'm okay with something I'm not." He zipped the bag, slung it over his shoulder, and before I could even process what was happening, he was out the door. Just like that. I remember standing there, frozen, my fork still on the table, the pasta cooling into a sticky lump. The silence in the house was deafening. And then I broke. I sobbed so hard my chest ached, the kind of sobbing that makes you choke on your own breath. My whole body shook, my mind racing in panic loops. What did I do wrong? Why no? How am I supposed to do this alone? Because here's the thing, I don't have family nearby. I moved states to be with him. My parents are a full day's drive away. My closest friends are scattered across the country. My whole world was him. And now it's just me. Me and this tiny life inside me who didn't ask for any of this. The days after Mark walked out were a blur. I honestly couldn't tell you what I did or how I functioned. I cried until my face was raw. My throat hurt from sobbing. I didn't cook, I barely drank water, and the only reason I ate at all was because I forced myself to chew down a piece of toast while telling myself, "The baby needs you. You don't get to give up." I stayed in bed most of the time, staring at the empty side where Mark used to sleep. The sheets still smelled faintly like his cologne. That was somehow worse than if they didn't smell like anything at all. Every time I rolled over and caught it, I'd get hit with another wave of grief so strong I thought I'd choke on it. But after a few days of wallowing, something inside me shifted. Not because I magically felt better, God no, but because I realized that if I kept going like this, I was going to break. And if I broke, what would happen to this little person inside me? That's when I picked up the phone and called my mom. It rang only once before she picked up. "Sweetheart, is everything okay?" Her voice had that sharp edge of worry that moms get, the one that makes you instantly crumble. The moment I heard it, I broke down again. "Mom," I sobbed. "He left. Mark left." I could hear her intake of breath on the other end. "Oh, honey." Her voice softened, almost trembling. "I'm so sorry." He said he can't do it. He doesn't want to be a dad. The words felt surreal coming out of my mouth, like I was telling her about someone else's life. There was a pause, then she said firmly, "Come home. Just come home. We'll figure this out together." I pressed the phone tighter to my ear, closing my eyes. For a second, the idea felt like relief, like a lifeline. But then my stomach nodded, because my relationship with my family has always been complicated. My mom and I are close, yes. She's my safe place. But my dad? That's a different story. He's old school in every sense. The kind of man who believes emotions are weakness, who measures worth by how hard you work and how little you complain. He never liked Mark, not from day one. He thought we rushed into marriage, thought Mark wasn't man enough to take care of me. He even made a speech at our wedding rehearsal dinner, half joking, but not really, about how he hoped Mark stepped up and didn't waste his daughter's best years. So the thought of showing up, pregnant and abandoned, felt like admitting my father was right. I could already hear his voice, "I told you so." And then there's my sister, Emily, 25F. She still lives at home too, not entirely by choice. She's been bouncing between jobs since graduation, never quite finding her footing. I love her, but we've always had a bit of a tense dynamic, me being the responsible older one, her being the free spirit who my parents alternately coddle and criticize. I worried about stepping into that mix, especially with my life already in shambles. But when I looked around my empty house, the walls closing in on me, the silence pressing like a weight, I knew I couldn't stay. I couldn't keep sleeping alone in that bed, waiting for texts that weren't coming. So I made the decision. Last week, I packed up what I could into my little sedan. It was a surreal process, folding clothes into suitcases, staring at the empty dresser drawers, taping up boxes with trembling hands. I left the nursery untouched, which was maybe the most painful part. I couldn't bear to dismantle the dreams we'd started, the half-formed plans, the mental image of what should have been. I loaded everything I could fit, locked the door to the house that no longer felt like mine, and drove. It's a 6-hour drive to my parents' place, and I cried for probably 5 of them. Ugly, hiccuping sobs that came and went in waves. Every song on the radio seemed to mock me. Every highway sign reminded me of how far I drifted from the life I thought I was building. When I finally pulled into the driveway of the house I grew up in, I just sat there for a minute, gripping the steering wheel. The house looked exactly the same, the faded blue shutters, the cracked front steps Dad always swore he'd fix. It was like being 16 again, except this time I had a belly and a broken marriage instead of a backpack and prom drama. The front door swung open, and there was Mom, running out with tears in her eyes. She wrapped me up in a hug before I even got out of the car. "You're safe now," she whispered into my hair. "You're safe." For the first time in days, I let myself believe that maybe she was right. But then, behind her, I saw my dad standing in the doorway, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Not angry exactly, but not welcoming either. Just stern, like he was already tallying up my mistakes. "Let's get you inside," he said gruffly, stepping aside. Emily popped her head out from behind him, her long hair in a messy bun. "Oh my God, you're really here," she said, half surprised, half curious. Her tone wasn't cruel, but there was definitely an undertone of this should be interesting. I carried my bag inside, my mom fussing over me immediately. "You must be starving. Do you want me to make you something? Or just lie down? You look pale." I glanced at my dad, who was still watching me like I was under interrogation. "I'm fine," I murmured, even though I wasn't. That first night was awkward, comforting because I wasn't alone anymore, but also suffocating because I could feel the tension in every conversation. Mom tiptoeing around me with kindness, Dad asking short, loaded questions like, "So, what's the plan now?" Emily scrolling on her phone, but sneaking glances at me like she was already drafting some group chat updates for her friends. And me? I sat at the dinner table, staring at my plate, thinking, this is my new reality. I'm 28, pregnant, and back in my childhood home. This wasn't supposed to happen. The first couple of days back home were almost comforting. Mom had done exactly what she promised on the phone. She turned the guest room into a little sanctuary for me. Soft blankets, a stack of pillows, a water bottle next to the bed. She even printed out a few pregnancy-safe meal plans she found online and stocked the fridge with stuff she knew I liked when I was a kid: Greek yogurt, berries, even those little granola bars I used to sneak into my backpack. For the first time in weeks, I felt like someone was taking care of me. She'd knock softly before coming in, ask if I'd eaten, rub my back when I cried. And at night, when the house was quiet, she'd sit on the edge of the bed and just let me talk. Or not talk. She didn't push. But that calm didn't last. By day 3, my dad started in. It wasn't an explosion or a single blow-up. It was little comments, muttered at first, then sharpened into something heavier. I'd be making tea in the kitchen, and he'd walk by with a snort, saying, "You made your bed, now lie in it." I'd sit down at the table, and he'd glance at my belly, then at me. "You can't just come running back here every time life gets hard." Or, my personal favorite, "What kind of example are you setting for your kid?" Every word landed like a bruise I couldn't show. I'd grip the mug tighter, forcing myself not to cry in front of him. I knew he never liked Mark. He made that clear for years. But there was something especially cruel about watching him aim that dislike at me now, when I was already in pieces. It was like he couldn't resist the opportunity to tell me I'd failed, and then blame me for falling apart. I tried to remind myself, he's old school. This is just his way of dealing with things. But when you're 4 months pregnant and abandoned, old school feels a lot like cold. And then, as if Dad's comments weren't enough, my sister started in too. Emily had been polite the first day, hugged me at the door, asked if I wanted tea. But by day 2, I could feel her irritation like static in the air. She'd sigh loudly whenever Mom hovered over me. She'd slam doors, roll her eyes, mutter under her breath. Finally, one night as Mom was making dinner, Emily just blurted it out. Great. Now I'm the forgotten kid again while everyone caters to pregnant princess over here. The word stung. I was standing right there, slicing vegetables. Emily, Mom warned, her voice tight. What? It's true. Emily crossed her arms, glaring at me. She waltzes back in here, takes over the guest room. Mom's making her special meals, and I'm just supposed to be invisible? Again? I set the knife down slowly, my hands trembling. I don't want to be here, I said quietly. Do you think this is fun for me? I didn't have another option. Emily rolled her eyes dramatically. You could have stayed and dealt with your own mess instead of dumping it on us. That hit like a slap. It's not a mess. My husband left me. I'm pregnant and alone. Yeah, and whose fault is that? She shot back before stomping out of the kitchen. Mom just stood there, wooden spoon in her hand, looking torn. She reached for my arm. She doesn't mean it, she said softly. She's just frustrated. She's been struggling with her own stuff. I nodded, swallowing hard. But it didn't matter. The damage was done. Now the house feels like it's holding its breath all the time. Dad's barbs. Emily's snide remarks. Mom caught in the middle, running interference, defending me when she can. Me trying not to cry at every meal. And every night when I go to bed in my safe space, I can still hear Dad's words echoing in my head. What kind of example are you setting for your kid? I'm starting to feel like a burden, like a guest who's overstayed her welcome, except this isn't a guest stay. This is my life now. I don't know how much longer I can do this before I break all over again. I thought I could handle the snide remarks. I thought if I kept my head down, helped around the house, and didn't make waves, things would settle. But the breaking point came 2 nights ago, and I don't think there's any way to come back from it. It was a Tuesday. Mom had made roast chicken, one of those dinners that used to feel like home. I'd helped set the table, trying to contribute so it didn't look like I was just mooching. By the time Dad came home from work, I was on the couch, feet propped up on a pillow because they'd been swelling so badly lately I could barely stand for more than 15 minutes. The door slammed shut. He dropped his keys in the dish by the entryway. I looked up, offered a small smile, hoping maybe this time we'd get through the evening without comments. But the moment his eyes landed on me, his jaw tightened. He stared at me for a beat too long before barking. So, what's your plan, huh? Just freeload here until the baby comes. The words hit like a punch to the chest. My smile fell immediately. Dad, He cut me off, voice sharp. You think raising a kid is about running home when it gets tough? You think you're teaching that baby anything good by showing up here with your tail between your legs? If Mark left, maybe he had a damn good reason. It was like the floor dropped out beneath me. My whole body went cold. I tried to hold it in, God, I really did. But the tears came anyway. Hot, uncontrollable sobs. I clutched my belly instinctively, like shielding the baby from his words. Don't you dare, Mom snapped, storming into the room. Don't you dare talk to her like that. She's your daughter, and she's hurting. Dad threw his hands up. I'm not being cruel, I'm being honest. The world isn't going to baby her just because she's pregnant. She needs to grow up and face reality instead of hiding in here like a child. Reality? Mom's voice cracked with fury. Her reality is that her husband abandoned her while she's carrying his child. And your response is to kick her while she's down. But Dad wasn't budging. He shook his head, muttering, coddling her isn't going to fix anything. I sat there sobbing, feeling like I'd shrunk into nothing. Like I wasn't even part of the conversation anymore, just the problem being dissected in front of me. And then Emily decided to pile on. She emerged from the hallway, arms crossed, hair in a messy bun, eyes narrowed at me. Honestly, he's not wrong, she said. It's not fair. I've been here for months, trying to get my life together, and now I have to share space with a crying, hormonal mess who's sucking up all the attention. Do you know how hard it is to focus on myself when the whole house revolves around you? I stared at her, speechless. My throat tightened so badly I couldn't form words. Mom's face went red. Emily, that's your sister. She didn't ask for any of this. Emily rolled her eyes. Well, neither did I. But somehow I'm the one who's invisible now. Great trade-off. That was it. That was the moment I broke completely. I got up without a word, feet throbbing, and shuffled down the hall. I shut myself in the guest room and locked the door. Then I collapsed on the bed and cried harder than I've cried in years, those ugly, heaving sobs that leave you gasping for air. Through the walls, I could still hear the muffled sound of Mom yelling at Dad, Dad's low, angry rumble in response, Emily slamming her door. It felt like the house was collapsing in on itself. And me? I curled up on the bed, hands over my stomach, whispering apologies to the baby. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry this is the world you're coming into. I promise I'll do better. I promise I'll protect you. I stayed locked in that room for the rest of the night. Didn't come out for dinner. Didn't say goodnight. Just lay there in the dark, alone again. Except this time, the loneliness was worse because it wasn't just Mark who'd abandoned me. It felt like my whole family had too. Now I'm second-guessing everything. When I first packed up my car and drove here, I thought I was making the only choice I had. Staying in that empty house by myself, pregnant, abandoned, and drowning in grief, it felt impossible. I couldn't afford rent on my own. I didn't have a safety net where we lived. I didn't want to risk spiraling into depression with no one around to notice. Coming home felt like the only lifeline. And for the first few days, it was a lifeline. Mom gave me exactly what I needed: comfort, food, reassurance. For a minute, I almost let myself believe I wasn't broken beyond repair. But now, every room feels like it's full of tension. Dad stares, his barbed comments about freeloading, about me needing to grow up. Emily's resentment, the way she mutters about me being the pregnant princess while she's stuck in my shadow. Even Mom, who's been my rock, is clearly fraying from trying to hold everyone together. It's like I've dropped a grenade in the middle of this house, and every day the shrapnel digs a little deeper into all of us. Some friends I've managed to confide in have suggested I look into single mother housing programs or even shelters. I didn't even know those existed, honestly. They said I'd have access to resources, community, and maybe even some independence again. But when I brought it up, Mom nearly cried. She grabbed my hand and said, "Absolutely not. You're not going to a shelter. You're my daughter. You need support more than ever. Don't let your father bully you out of this house. You belong here." And I believe her. I do. But I also can't shake the voice in my head, my dad's voice, saying maybe I am selfish. Maybe I am expecting too much from everyone, barging back into their lives with my mess, turning their home upside down because my own life fell apart. The guilt eats at me. I lie awake at night, one hand on my belly, and I wonder, am I teaching my baby resilience by staying, or am I teaching them to lean on others too much? Am I giving them safety, or am I showing them dysfunction? I didn't choose for Mark to leave, but everything after that has been my choice. And sometimes I wonder if I've already made the wrong one. So Reddit, AITA for moving back home after my husband left me, even though it's clearly causing strain in my family?